Hi everyone, it's Fiona Marks here. I'm wondering if you're someone who's come across Lajjatatiya Vashtas or difficult combinations in your chart. Maybe you've seen something on YouTube, or maybe you've had a session with an astrologer and you found out that you have something more complicated in your chart, but you don't really know how to unpack that or what it really means, or what, more importantly, what to do with it to improve the experience that you're having here living in the world. And for that reason, I have created a group called Redemption Art Detectives, and we are looking at these more complicated placements in birth charts. And we're really taking that curious investigator's view of just trying to understand exactly what's going on and then looking for remedies to apply and learning from each other. And we just had our first introductory meeting for a weekday, and I'm doing the next introductory meeting for the weekend group this weekend. So I wanted to put down here on the video the content of that introductory meeting in case it's something that you're thinking about and you're wondering whether to come along. So in the presentation, I wanted to begin by just covering what the group is all about for me and where it's really come from, what my intention is. Then I want to look at some of these placements that people might be finding difficult. So I've just listed some of them here. Maybe it's a Lajjatatiya Vashta, maybe it's debilitation or negative Drigbala, maybe it's where your ascendant lord is placed, maybe it's a particularly difficult conjunction, maybe it's your Saturn return or Saturn going over your natal moon. You will know what it is that has bothered you about a reading that you've had or something that you've watched or listened to that you just really want to understand better. And then I want to talk about some of the setup of the group and some of the remedies that we might look at. So ever since I started practicing as a Vedic astrologer, I have had a dream of running groups of people with similar astrological challenges. And when I very first set up my website in 2020, I always had a tab there called Hubs. And my idea was to have like people that have all got Saturn-Mars conjunctions, or people that have all got debilitation, or people maybe just of the same ascendant, not that it's difficult, but people with whatever, Gemini ascendant or Scorpio ascendant, because I think we can learn so much from each other. And by seeing the variety in other people's charts can help us understand what we're struggling with in our own chart. And having friends is a great way to work on problems together. So it's been a dream for me, but obviously it's something that takes a little while to read enough charts, to have contact with enough people to be able to say, hey, would you like to come along? So I'm super excited that we've reached that point where we have a whole bunch of people who are interested in understanding better these complex things that are in the chart that are easy for an astrologer to explain with a sentence or two, but then leave you wondering, how has that actually been showing up in my life and what can I do with it? So in my mind, at the moment, we're starting this sort of one group, a weekday group and a weekend group. You're welcome to come to both. You're welcome to swap between one or the other. I'm not expecting that people are necessarily going to stay in this group for a long time. It's something that you might want to dip into, get an answer for, and then there's no need for you to be there anymore. Or it might be the kind of group that you get a lot of support and solace from knowing that you're speaking with other people in a similar situation. So right now, we're just creating sort of one big group to understand difficult conjunctions or placements in a birth chart. But as I say, my dream would be to get finer and finer into the variety of that and have maybe a group about the shamed Avashta, or maybe a group about agitation, or maybe a group, even smaller group with multiple shamed Avashtas. So I'm hoping to spread out into even smaller groups, but right now anybody can come along with anything that they're finding difficult in their chart. And really, one of my big inspirations with this group is to, in fact, reframe and maybe even rename some of these difficult placements, because often we hear about the shamed Avashta or the legit, we hear about starvation and agitation, and it can almost sound like a curse. And here I've got a slide which goes back to one of the very first videos that I ever made for YouTube that I put on my teacher's site, all about Rahu and Ketu and the hero's journey, because there's so much about astrology and the 12 houses and the 12 signs that speak to us about the hero's journey. So you'll notice that this slide comes directly from that very first video. And what is so inspiring for all humans about the hero's journey, it's one of those monomyths that turns up in different cultures, is the fact that we don't really know what we're here for at the beginning of our journey. We go on this kind of adventure and quest, but we face in this diagram of the circle, we face some kind of challenge that we must go through the darkness and go through the unknown and come up the other end and come back with the elixir or the holy grail or whatever our quest was about. We bring it back to our village and to our people. So this hero's journey kind of mirrors what's going on this is a list of the hero's journey as we see it for a script writing course or whatever. And then if we look at how that fit with the houses, we can see that it lines up quite well, that this call to adventure, that's really important part of the hero's journey, is really our first house. And then the meeting of the mentor and finding that stability is our fourth house. The fifth house, crossing our threshold and creating our legacy. The tests, allies and enemies, matches up really well with the sixth house. And then the seventh house is where we begin to get into this ability that we have to transform matter into the non-material. And that brings us to the eighth house, which would be that abyss at the bottom of the circle, which is the only way that we can reach the reward, and would line up with the ninth house or also with Sagittarius. And then the 10th house of the final battle, doing all of the hard work that is required to complete this quest, having the gains of the elixir or the pulling the sword out of the stone and returning that to our original homeland. So this hero's story is in some ways embedded in the zodiac and the houses of Vedic astrology. But and this comes right from the Rahu Ketu video, which you can go have a look at, because what's really interesting about Rahu and Ketu is that they transit in the opposite direction. So they create a current of disruption through our hero's journey that brings up things from the unconscious. But what is really interesting for our purposes in terms of these difficult placements is looking at the whole hero's journey. There's often a redemption arc, a place where the hero has tripped or fallen off the path and has doubted themselves and perhaps even taken themselves off the journey. They just feel that they are no longer worthy, and in fact that they are causing the failure of this particular mission. So it's a moment of great doubt. And the redemption arc actually is the most interesting character in the story. And it seems to me that we, in the Lajatati Avashtas, this shamed Avashta, which is so difficult, is actually what lines up most clearly with the redemption arc of the hero in the story. So I would like to reframe the Lajatati Avashtas to become the redemption Avashtas, and think about, if we go to this excellent infographic on the internet, all about the ordeal, the reward and the road back, the resurrection. These are the points where those redemption moments come. And it's not necessarily, sometimes the redemption arc comes right before the person faces that abyss and faces that darkness. Sometimes the redemption arc comes right before they do the final battle. So it can be in a couple of different places. But it can be where the hero has really let down the cause, and If we think about on this infographic, they have some of those famous sci-fi stories or mythical stories. If we think about Star Wars, in some ways, the first 3 that were released, the ones that I grew up with, we can see that in some ways Han Solo has that shame path because of his trading in illegal goods. He ends up being captured by a bounty hunter, and that really affects the progress of the hero, the Luke Skywalker journey. Also, the whole way Han Solo kind of battles with whether he's really worthy or actually a cause of shame. And even the person that betrays Han Solo, the Lando Calrissian character who sells Han Solo out, he then also comes back as a hero into the story. And I also think about, I think it's Sam in The Lord of the Rings, the friend who, really becomes overpowered by the ring at the very last minute and can't throw the ring away. And it also makes me think about Ron in Harry Potter in the last books, where he just can no longer face that he's not at the level of just amazingness of Harry Potter, and he's also not of that smart and intellectual level of Hermione, and so he, deserts them when it's just the 3 of them against the world. So these characters that they might not even be the main hero in the hero's journey, but they're really important to the finishing of the arc of the story. A character that has to face letting people down and doing the wrong thing, and then actually their redemption arc is to come back in to the group and help save the day. And I think that this is what the Shamed Avashta is offering us. So it's my inspiration for this group is, what can we do with each of these difficult placements? What can we do to actually find the empowerment and fully embrace the potential of these difficult placements? And so as part of the meeting and getting together, we're going to go through how do you actually work out what Lajatati Avashtas you have. So this is from my Lajatati Avashta tool. I'm just skimming through it here, but I will, as part of the meeting, talk you through how each of these Avashtas is calculated. And then in the group when we met on Monday, we had time to dive into the charts of the people who had attended and really analyze, because it's one thing to be told or to understand that a certain thing creates a Lajatati Avashta or creates a difficult placement. But what if that planet's exalted, or what if it's in a great house, or what if it's also getting a lot of delight, a chance to really get your questions answered about how to put all of the variety and complexity of your placements together. And then really what this group is about is, on one hand, bringing in all of my astrological perspective to help unpack your charts. So on one level, it's every month meeting to dive deeper and deeper into your chart. And on another level, it's about learning from each other, because we can all read in the textbook what a particular conjunction or difficult placement feels like or looks like. But there is just no better teacher than hearing people's experience. That's when the concept gets meat on the bones. We really get to understand what it's all about. And how is it affected by it being a different ascendant? What is that Avashta like if you're a Sagittarius ascendant? What's it like if you're an Aquarius ascendant? Maybe what's it like if it's happening in the first house, or what's it like if it's happening in the second house? How is that different? What about the sign that it is in? And what about the house lords that are involved? Are Avashtas much more difficult when they involve the first lord? This is what we want to learn from each other. Maybe you've got a particular Avashta and it's with your 4th and 6th lord or something, and someone else has got an Avashta and it's with their first lord, and we'll be able to hear what that difference is like. And then another great thing that comes from being an astrologer is just understanding that all suffering is equal. We're all having these different varieties of suffering. And by listening to other people's situation, we gain compassion for them and compassion for ourselves. So I just find there is so much value in doing these things in a group. And it's really important when we run groups like that that our communication is impeccable. So I like to run my groups with an awareness of non-violent communication. And my tips for that are, which I'll go through with you in the group, is being connected to your own heart center, knowing what you're feeling and listening to what other people are feeling. So we want to really be grounded in the heart when we're communicating. And then once we do decide to speak, we want to speak from our own self-experience, not from a place of judgment or expertise or detachment, but just how I feel. What's coming up for me when you're speaking is a great way to be in rapport with people as we speak about difficult topics. And it's always good to remember the good old model of parent, adult, child, that we can relate to people in these three different modes. Sometimes we'll be in that parent expertise kind of role. Sometimes we'll be in that child, learner, receptive role. As we are all adults in this group, I'm hoping, and I will be running the group in the way that we are all adults. That is, that we are peers to each other. We're all equal. There's nobody superior here and there's nobody inferior. So for that reason, it's a good reminder that one of the unique elements of the peer-to-peer relationship is we don't give out unsolicited advice to each other because we're peers and we're equal. That advice level does come when there is that different levels, perhaps between the parent and the child. Of course, the parent is going to give advice. But between adult to adult, all advice needs to be requested, not just handed out without the other person soliciting it first. And then it's just great to remember that ancient Greek philosopher, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and that is about the kind of ratio that we should be using these things in. A lot more listening and probably a little bit less talking. So as we go through these redemption arc detective groups, and as I say, I'm happy for people to come and go depending on their need, it will all be in the context of this respectful communication. And we will be, the entire point of the group is to find remedies for any areas of the life where these difficult placements are causing suffering. And we are currently in the Greatness of Saturn book clubs. All of this is done through a Patreon account, but in the Greatness of Saturn, which is part of your Patreon membership, we have been working our way through that book. And we are just in the chapter at the moment talking about remedies. So this is what we will be working with the group over time, is mantras that might be useful, affirmations that might be useful, just broadening your understanding that might be really useful, meditation practice, pranayama, and it goes on. There are many strategies that we can use to apply our intelligence to the dynamics in our chart. So that's the aim of the group. I think for the beginning several meetings, it'll be around the understanding, like just really unpacking and understanding exactly what's going on. What are the house lords involved? What are the houses involved? Where does it show up in this person's life? So we're really going to be everybody's individual charts, taking our time to more deeply understand each of these placements. But once we have a good level of understanding with that, we're also going to be looking at how to remedy these situations. So if you want to catch up on what happened in the first group, the blog post is here already. And this is just a summary of what happened in the meeting. So you could read through that. And of course, if you have any questions, you can just book a time with me. So you can find out about this on my website at Hubs. And if you read through all of this, and then if you have any questions, feel free to book a time to catch up with me. If you can't get along to this first meeting, or maybe not for a few meetings, please feel free to join at any point. I really am on a mission to transform our relationship with these difficult placements so that we become those heroic characters from the myths that we were just discussing, we find our way back to the main path of the story and find our redemption arc. So looking forward to seeing you soon, and please reach out if you have any questions. Okay, bye everyone.